What's up, welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of A24's romance film Materialists, the follow-up to Past Lives from director Celine Song. This film stars Dakota Johnson, Pedro Pascal, and Chris Evans. This is a film that has been hotly anticipated by me and I think many because, of course, it's Celine Song's follow-up to Past Lives. Past Lives, a frankly transcendent film from 2 years ago, my number 2 movie of 2023. An absolute knockout film. And following that movie's success, of course, getting Oscar nominations, Celine Song really rising up out of the New York theater world and, screenwriting world and becoming a big in-demand director at that point. Her follow-up was going to get a lot of attention and also the biggest budget she ever received as a filmmaker, attention from stars, etc. So makes sense that there's been, I think, good fanfare and good fervor, and A24 is certainly the right studio for this type of movie to make this happen. I think what's most notable about A24's Materialists is that it's not really a romantic comedy, despite what some of the marketing might suggest. This is a pure romance drama film, New York romance story. I enjoyed Materialists overall, but I do understand some of the criticism. Dakota Johnson, as the lead of the film, has to drive a lot of emotional progression, and that has not traditionally been her strength. She's also contrasted with Pedro Pascal, someone who hasn't really done much in the way of this material. I think Chris Evans is the most successful performer of the three, but really it was the structure of the film that surprised me the most. It was just a lot more straightforward than I expected. It wasn't really positioned as a back and forth love triangle the way you might think when you understand the concept of the film. A film I enjoyed, but people's expectations might be a little off center. Yeah, I think the core premise of Dakota Johnson's Lucy character is awesome. She's a matchmaker in New York City working for a matchmaking company. I think it's great. I love the setup. I think she's also kind of right at home in that kind of role. I think Dakota Johnson, she's someone who's certainly had an up and down career at this point. I think she's best in more supporting fare, like a Lost Daughter, like a Cha-Cha Real Smooth, things like that. This is, though, is a big lead for her. However, she has presence. She has star power. She always has. And when she's handling the kind of external plot in the beginning of the movie, I think it works. And of course, we quickly understand the conceit of the love triangle. Lucy encounters Pedro Pascal's Harry at the wedding of someone she successfully match-made, and Harry is this uber wealthy private equity person giving Lucy seemingly the lifestyle and the material, quote unquote, desires that she's often openly longed for. And contrast that with her chance meeting at the same wedding with her ex-boyfriend John, played by Chris Evans, someone who she liked, but who was always down on his luck, not very financially liquid, to say the least, and it just never worked out. And I think at this point, it's like, oh, okay, they're going to position the two choices to Lucy, and she's going to have to, go back and forth. But what I was most struck with over the course of the plot is that once you progress through the relationship with Harry as they begin dating, it eventually gets to a point where there's this not even conflict, but just kind of realization that it's not going to work out, and it just ends. And then Harry's never in the picture again. There's no going back. There's no back and forth between Lucy's decision making. She just goes from one and then she goes to the other. And then at the end of the film, she does end up with John, deciding to take the chance despite knowing that he's not necessarily going to be any more financially viable than he was before, but maybe she's going to be more okay with that this time around. So it was just it was kind of like an A to B movie. I was expecting more back and forth and I guess just kind of the illusion of a sense of true conflict on the part of the audience member. You're just kind of watching it unfold. And, a lot's been made about the chemistry between Dakota Johnson and Pedro Pascal. And I think it's okay in the movie, and I think it actually kind of makes sense for the characters in the sense that they never really are in love with each other. They just kind of love the idea of them both being together until they come to the realization, Lucy more so than Harry, that it's not worth it kind of thing. So I think the fact that they're kind of colder or simple in their affections I think it kind of works for what the characters are doing, and it's kind of funny because the press tour with this movie between Dakota Johnson and Pedro Pascal, they've had great chemistry, right? Dakota Johnson, no stranger to crushing it on the press tour, but they've been quite amusing together, and I'm curious if that stuff will help propel this film to some solid box office success for the type of movie it is, a la what happened with Anyone But You a few years ago. We'll see. There's some good callbacks with stuff, regarding a certain surgery, cosmetic surgery that can be happening. I won't spoil what it is. And I think there's some really sumptuous filmmaking and settings when John and Lucy go to a wedding in upstate New York. It's filmed so warmly, looks great. Harry's apartment, again, it's this uber wealthy person, and the way Lucy peers around the corner as she explores it, I think all of that works really well. Something that I think I could have taken or leave was the Zoe Winters character. Zoe Winters, welcome Succession supporting character. She ends up in this film as someone who Lucy's trying to matchmake, and she's been struggling with trying to work it out, and then things go wrong. There's a really bad date, and Lucy really grapples with her responsibility for what happened. And I think it's handled well, but it's not necessarily truly grappled with. I don't know. It was kind of a messy plot mechanic that I honestly could have not had that entirely, and could have just spent more with the back and forth between the two choices. I don't know. Overall though, again, I like the movie. I think the movie works and flows, but there's just things you're going to brush up against overall as you're thinking about it. I like the swing from Celine Song. Also, amusingly, she previously worked as a matchmaker in the city, which is amazing. Lived experience being put on screen. I also have to say that I think Chris Evans was excellent in the movie. We've been kind of wanting him to make good choices again, and he's been inconsistent at best, post Avengers Endgame in that regard. I think there's been successes such as Knives Out, but other, big failures like Ghosted, Red Notice to a certain degree, hasn't been the best. And I think this was a great use of his talents. He is a charismatic, winsome, wholesome guy, and the way he was longing after Lucy in the film, I think was very believable. And I think he did a good job with the character. Obviously, the film doesn't really compare to Past Lives. I'm not expecting it to make the top 10. Oscar-wise, probably odds are stacked against it in terms of another, run of nominations for Celine Song. I would expect not, but hey, I think it's a good one, and I can't wait to see what she does next. I'm happy Pedro Pascal did something like this. We've talked about Pedro a lot lately, and is he getting overexposed? He's in everything, and he will continue to be in everything. But I mean, if you think about where we've seen him lately, Mandalorian, Gladiator 2, The Last of Us, soon the Fantastic Four reboot, this movie definitely stands out as something different than all of those. So I'm glad he did it, and I hope he continues to expand his range, because he also is a very winsome, charismatic performer, and even if maybe this role didn't totally work out for him, I'm glad he made the choice. So yeah, let me know what you think of Materialists. What'd you like most about it? Did the movie totally work for you? What'd you brush up against? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. I'll see you next time.